Dr. Bill O'Neill. I'm the medical director for the Center of Structural Heart Disease at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, and I'm a practicing interventional cardiologist. The disease atrial fibrillation is becoming increasingly important. As the population ages, more and more people are developing atrial fibrillation, and some estimate that more than 30% of people over the age of 70 will develop atrial fibrillation. So there are really millions of patients with that disease. In and of itself, atrial fibrillation is not dangerous, but it does have one significant problem, and that's that when the left atrium is contracting normally, blood washes through very easily, but when the atrium starts to fibrillate, clots can start forming on the wall of the left atrium. In particular, clots form in the left atrial appendage, and so clots can laminate in the left atrial appendage, and then if they break off, they can go up to the brain and cause a stroke. So that's really the biggest problem with AFib, that there's a risk of stroke. As a result of that, many patients are put on blood thinners, primarily warfarin, but also new 10A inhibitors are available now that are trying to be used to help with some of the complications of warfarin. There are a lot of problems with anticoagulants. People can fall, they can bleed, they can have lots of side effects, and as a result, mechanical approaches to try to treat this have occurred. And basically, there's a variety of devices that go in from a transseptal approach to go in and occlude the left atrial appendage. One of those devices, the one that's first been approved by the FDA, is the Watchman device from Boston Scientific. As everybody knows, the FDA rarely approves devices just to do a particular thing. They're really now looking for more outcome data. Is this device better than the previous at fixing whatever disease or problem we're talking about? An example of that would be the renal denervation studies. They needed to show that there was a substantial reduction in blood pressure. Analogous to that, they wanted to show that if you put a device in the left atrial appendage, not only can you get it there safely, but also will it improve the outcomes. And that's kind of where a little bit of the controversy started to exist. When you start putting catheters in the heart, especially in the learning phase, there's a small chance that the catheters could disrupt the left atrial appendage. The left atrium is very thin, and so in the original Watchman randomized trial, there was a slight excess of pericardial effusions and a pericardial tamponade, so there was a little bit of a safety concern. The device appeared to be very effective. It prevented strokes equally to the competitor, which is Coumadin therapy. But it really delayed adoption, and so it actually took a much longer period of time, almost 4 years of follow-up, before the device actually was shown to have clinical benefit, meaning that it actually decreased stroke in comparison to Coumadin therapy. And so now with the longer-term follow-up, I think some of the controversy is abating, and it looks like it's going to be a very effective treatment. They've gotten sort of verbal approval. They've been told that they've been quote-unquote approved, but they haven't started selling it all yet. There still is a lot of unknowns. First, what are they going to charge? We haven't been told that. And then, equally importantly, what is CMS going to reimburse? If we go back to the analogy of the mitral clip, they're charging $30,000 a device. Hospitals are losing $10,000 to $15,000 every time they put one of those in, so there's going to be a huge resistance to adoption. So I think a lot really depends on what DRG this procedure will fall into and how much CMS is going to reimburse. The procedure is going to be largely done in Medicare-eligible patients because it's largely a disease of older people. So there still are a lot of questions about how much adoption is going to occur. And then finally, talking to patients, I think that if patients are very stable on Coumadin, they're really unlikely to want to go through a procedure that could cause a slight chance of having a problem, like a pericardial tamponade occurring. So I think those are, to me, three unknowns: the price of the device, what CMS is going to reimburse, and how much patients would be willing to switch over from Coumadin therapy. No, the trial allowed the patients that were taking Coumadin to quit taking Coumadin about 3 months after the procedure was done, and I think that's how it's probably going to be labeled. So the whole idea is that you can discontinue Coumadin therapy because you've occluded the left atrial appendage, so the nidus for a clot is gone, and so you won't have to take Coumadin. That's the big selling point and the big advantage. I think it's really not that uncommon. There's probably some backdoor negotiation that's going on between the company and the FDA over the labeling, and you mentioned that, and that's taking increasingly grave importance because recently, as you know, CMS has really been willing to reimburse for FDA-approved on-label indications for products. And in my mind, there's going to be a big question if the device is approved for Coumadin-eligible patients, then it's really going to restrict who we're going to be able to use it on. Honestly, I think the patients that need it the most are people that have had problem with Coumadin. They've had bleeds, they've had falls, they've had intracranial hemorrhage or subdural hematomas, and they don't want anything to do with Coumadin. Those patients were never treated in that trial. So there's going to be a gray zone, and I think that's going to be a big question mark about whether or not it's going to be approved. So I think there still is a long way to go. My suspicion is that CMS is probably going to put a national coverage decision on it at some point, and then we'll have some clarity about who they'll actually approve the procedure and pay for.